Deputy Varadkar, I'll conclude on this. Accept that your government's appalling failures on the housing issue have given a real gift to the far right in this country, and what do you intend to do now to undo the damage that you and your government have done?
Thank you.
Thanks, thanks, Deputy. I just want to be very clear that I don't accept the suggestion of double standards in this regard. I've often had the opportunity to speak with our colleagues in the US, with the US administration and members of Congress, and when I say to them that we would like something done to help undocumented Irish people in the US, or indeed undocumented people from other parts of the world in the US, I precisely point to what we have done, because what we have done as a government in the last number of years is put in place schemes to allow undocumented migrants to become documented. For example, those who came here on student visas who became undocumented, those who built lives here and had children here who became undocumented. So all we're ever asking the US administration to do is what we've already done for undocumented people in our country. So I totally reject that argument of double standards on that point because it is misinformed. Deputy, I think we'll both agree on one point. There is absolutely no excuse for racism of any form. And I had the opportunity to meet with the trade unions and business leaders this morning under the Labour Employer and Economic Forum. One of the leaders of one of the health unions told me that there had been protests outside of a hospital in Dublin in recent times against foreign nationals who are members of staff in that hospital. And while there is no excuse for any form of racism, in my view, under any circumstances, it really is a low blow and a new low if healthcare workers, who we are so grateful for the fact that they have come here, are now facing protests and racism from those who don't believe they're welcome here. And I think that's really appalling. And it's something that the government is going to fight against. It's one of the reasons why we'll have our National Action Plan Against Racism, which is going to be published in early March. That will be led by Minister O'Gorman, but will be a whole of government effort, and it will include funding for integration and also for counteracting anti-racist activities. Deputy, racists and the far right will blame whatever problem the country is facing on migrants. That's the way it works, that's the way they think. So if we have a housing crisis, it'll be the foreigners are taking our homes. If we have an unemployment crisis, it'll be the foreigners are taking our jobs. If we've got high levels of crime, they'll blame the foreigners for the high levels of crime. If there's violence against women, one of the oldest tropes in the book, they will blame that on migrants and people who've come here from overseas, particularly those who are brown or black. We shouldn't play into those arguments, Deputy. And I think inadvertently you're actually doing that. Whatever problem any country faces, they're going to blame it on the brown man or the brown woman. It's housing now. It could just as easily be unemployment. It could just as easily be crime. And I think you need to be careful, Deputy, that you don't inadvertently actually assist them in the kind of things that you're saying.
Deputy.
Well, I can assure the Taoiseach that I'm very careful in what I say, and I'm very clear on my message that refugees are welcome here. All refugees, including the 130 people that this state deported in the last month alone. The housing crisis, does it add to the crisis of racism in Irish society? Without any question, it does. Of course they will blame everything, but the housing crisis is a gift to them, which is why I have no faith in your government to sort this issue. My faith is in the ordinary people. We need a mass movement from below in Irish society on this issue, and that is why I am very pleased that on Saturday the 18th of February, the Lakela Coalition are calling people out onto the streets, and we need masses of ordinary people to rally against racism and fascism. This needs to be a demonstration which is not just anti-racist, but anti-government as well, and calling for action on housing and the social-led crisis. I appeal to people to attend in very large numbers. And finally, I note the fact that the Forces Trade Union are backing this demonstration, calling on their members to attend. I think that is an example that needs to be followed, and I would call on every union in the country to make a similar call and help to make this a massive demonstration on February the 18th.
Taoiseach, please.
Deputy, all I'll say is this. None of us in this House want to see the issue of race or the issue of migration become centre stage in our politics. Most of all, somebody like me, given my colour and my family background and the fact that I am biracial. And I'd just like to ask you just to consider your approach to this and consider it carefully. And I know you're well-intentioned and I know you're fervently anti-racist and internationalist, and I absolutely accept that. But I just ask you not to inadvertently play their game. Don't make any excuses for them. No matter what problem a country faces, the far right and racists will blame that on migrants. If we didn't have a housing crisis and we had an unemployment crisis, they'd blame that on the migrants instead. And if we didn't have an unemployment crisis, they'd blame crime on the migrants. They will always pick on whatever issue is hurting a country at a particular point in time and try to blame that on the other. And I just ask you not to make excuses for them or do anything that might inadvertently play into their arguments.
Deputy Thomas Pringle, please.
Thank you, Can Corlin. I would just like to start off as well by